All right, you wanted to talk about this female Olympic boxer hammered by a boxer who failed gender test, quits match in tears. I want to begin by saying I don't think women should ever box, and I'm not even convinced men should. I don't like saying that because it sounds soft, but I think I'm not so sure. I feel quite convinced that these sports like boxing are not moral. And I think that because it would seem to me that if I am going to inflict serious harm on you or you on me, or if we're going to attempt that, and that is what's brought about through boxing, if not immediately, I mean, what damage results to the brain late in life if you continue doing something like this? I actually don't know, so maybe I'm wrong, and so maybe I'll change my mind. But at least in MMA, like it seems like the goal is to inflict damage to your opponent, okay? If I don't have a good reason to do that, I don't think I should do that. And the reasons seem to be money and fame and sport. I don't think that's a good reason to inflict, Trent Horn disagrees with me on this. He thinks it's perfectly reasonable, and there's a lot of skill. Of course, there's skill. That's not the point. But I think that's a pretty good argument. Don't inflict potential serious damage on another person without a good reason. Yeah.
If it gets to the level, I'm ambivalent on this as well.
But I also want to caveat that by saying I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, I love it. I would love to watch a boxing match. Like, if you invited me, I would love it.
Yeah.
So it's not that I'm turned off by it. I really enjoy it. I'm just not sure we should be putting people in a ring and making them damage each other.
Yeah. Well, full disclosure,
certainly not women.
Full disclosure, I did wrestling in high school, and I really liked it. Grew up watching wrestling, and lately I've gotten into watching old boxing matches. So I find it riveting, just to watch it. But I think that you're right. There is a certain point where it's no longer classical wrestling.
Yeah,
it becomes gladiator sport, and we look at it was that Christian monk who stopped the gladiator games in Rome.
Oh, okay.
It was one Christian monk who stood up and said, enough's enough. Now, with the gladiators, men died.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get to that point. But between, for example, classical Greco-Roman wrestling, which I don't think anybody would have a moral problem with, but there's a gradation here. And so between that and, let's say, high-end MMA, where guys are like bloodied and there's boxing. I was just watching a clip from a match where a boxer died a few minutes after because his brain had died, but his body was still functioning. So he was still standing. The opponent's over here. He turns towards the corner, and his arms are shaking like this. His body is erect, but apparently his brain was just marshmallows. And that they ended the match, and he died. So you don't want to get to that point. I don't know where that cutoff is.
Sure, I get it. I get it. Because people will then say to me, "What about football?" and at some point, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fair enough. You got me.
Yeah.
But I certainly think it's repulsive to have women fight. Like, men are stronger than women. Our bodies are meant to, if they're at their prime, battle, protect, do strong things. It's at least more in keeping with the male body.
Yeah.
Women's bodies are meant to nurture life, give birth, feed, and so to turn that into a weapon, I think is grotesque.
Well, this is what we've done to our daughters since the secular feminist revolution, as opposed to the authentic feminist revolutions of the 1920s that were inspired by Christian mothers and the suffragan movement. But I'm speaking about the
I think they were evil from the beginning.
I'd be open to learning more about that. But the secular feminism of the late 50s and the 60s and 70s is that it turned our girls into boys, and it judged them according to masculine standards. So things that are proper to males are physical strength. That's proper to us. It's not proper to women.
Yeah.
What's proper to women is emotional strength. Resilience. And so here we have a case where we're pimping out our daughters to perform according to male standards. The strength index in boxing. But a more appropriate category, I think, would be for women to compete according to their strengths. And for example, you look at the United Nations, you can't have this in the Olympics, but you look at the United Nations, and I think it's something like 98% of those who are involved in translation, instantaneous translation, are women. Like, women have this genius of communication. That's why all of these translators of instantaneous translation are almost entirely women. It's a genius proper to them. So, find some way to where they can compete against each other as legitimate, beautiful amusement according to their strengths, not according to the strengths of men.
Yeah, I feel kind of gaslit that I have to pretend that the father in here, who in a sense is the victim, right? Because as we're going to see, she goes up against essentially a fella, I think, and gets the snot kicked out of her. I still feel kind of gaslit to think this father's a hero. I'm like, what father would let their daughter get into a ring and punch other women and be punched by them? It's
right.
I'm sick of pretending things aren't gross when they're gross.
Yep.
Like, drag queens are gross. It's disgusting. If you dress up like a woman as a man and sexualize yourself, this is disgusting. And I'm not going to pretend it's not disgusting, so you might take my Christian objection to homosexuality more seriously. I think unless you've been sexually groomed, or unless you've just been brainwashed by the Gnostic death cult, you see someone doing that, go, that's yucky.
Yeah, call it out. Yeah. And we do ourselves no favors by being silent on this, because this fad is going to pass. This fad's going to pass, and they're going to look back and say, who had the integrity to stand up and defend these girls?
Yeah.
And 4 or 5 outliers, maybe Matt Fradd, and so it's then that you have integrity. It takes a little bit of time, though, because then people come to their senses and they say, oh, yeah, you were the one who said the truth. And you're right, we have to call this out.
So anyway, let's see. She's 25. After Italian boxer Angelina Carini was powerfully punched twice by an Algerian boxer in the Paris Olympics who had previously been barred from fighting women, she stopped her bout 46 seconds in and broke down in tears, saying she had never been hit so hard.
Yeah.
Carini, 25, was fighting Algerian Imaine Khalif, who was disqualified from the Women's World Championship in 2023 after failing testosterone and gender eligibility tests. International Amateur Boxing President Umar Kremlov asserted that DNA tests had proved they had XY chromosomes and were thus excluded. In Cabrini's match against Khalif, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, apologies, one punch dislodged her chin strap and a second smashed against her chin and bloodied her shorts. I am heartbroken, Carini said. I went to the ring to honor my father. I was told a lot of times that I was a warrior, but I preferred to stop for my health. I've never felt a punch like this. I got into the ring to fight. I didn't give up, but one punch hurt too much, and so I said enough. I'm going out with my head held high. Italian Prime Minister says, I think that athletes who have male genetic characteristics should not be admitted to women's competitions, etc., obviously. So it seems like this person may have been intersex, so there was maybe some confusion as to the sex of this individual.
Right. Well, whatever it is, let's presume that we don't know for sure, but let's say this is a transgender male, a guy. Yeah. Let's say it's a guy.
Okay.
We're going to be judged by history, by God, but also by history in the same way that we look back on 19th century England for putting, arsenic in their makeup or lead in their makeup. And we make fun of them. That how could you be so backward as to allow all of these absurd practices in, Victorian England, or maybe these absurd practices in Ottoman Turkey in the 17th century? Like, how backward were people? How did society get to that point that people were so blind as to allow their children to be castrated and to sing in the Sultan's court? What kind of society is that? Well, maybe very much like the society that we have now, where we allow, girls to compete against guys, and we know it's going to result in serious bodily damage. And while you got to do it, it's for fun, and I don't think we're unlike the court of the Sultan. I don't think we're too far from that. Knowingly doing things that are plainly wrong, immoral, and and just persisting in that foolhardiness, that disregard for God's design and for human dignity. I think we're at that point, and it's got to break soon. And hopefully our grandchildren won't have to live through this. Hopefully it'll be over by next Tuesday.
Well, there are champions like Chloe Cole, who I've had on the show, who is a detransitioner, and others who are speaking out powerfully against this. I'd want to kind of offer a suggestion to maybe those who are watching and they listen to you speak, Father, and I think, golly, if I was that articulate, I'd feel comfortable kind of addressing or arguing with my family members who are pushing this insanity on me, but I don't know how to. Whenever I do, I get tongue-tied. I'm not really good at coming up with reasons, and it seems to me that you actually don't need to have reasons just to say what seems apparent to you.
Yeah.
And you might then look for them, but you go, no, that's wrong. Well, why is it wrong? Yeah, I don't know. It's just clearly wrong to me. So you just don't think you should have women punching each other in the face. I don't think you should probably have men punch women in the face. That's just, I don't know how you don't see that's wrong.
Yeah.
And then they might lay out statistics and quotations and arguments. I think it's okay to go, yeah, all right, well done.
Yeah.
I still think it's abhorrent.
I think
That my point is, don't be afraid to proclaim the truth, even if you can't come up with an argument for it.
Right.
Now, you might then have some sort of obligation to then look into it if you think it's worthwhile going back to your friend or family member to engage in some sort of back and forth. But sometimes it's not even that helpful to do that. So at least proclaim what's obvious, even if you can't defend it very well.
Yeah. Have the courage to proclaim the truth, but have the peace to be silent in the face of opposition. There's a tactic in negotiations that after a price is put out there, the first person to speak loses, And so how much are you asking? And I say, well, $5 million.
And you just let it go.
And you just stare, and you're comfortable with the silence. And the first person to kind of speak loses. So if it comes back and says, oh, well, they've already broken the ice. If I come out and say $5 million, and then you're silent, and then I begin to squirm a little bit, and I say, well, I mean, you've lost. And it's the same in bargaining for souls. Where are these interactions? We're bargaining with each other. Who's going to lead who to that eternal goal? Are you going to lead me to hell, or am I going to lead you to heaven? And sometimes it comes down simply to stating the truth and being comfortable in silence. Like, I don't believe girls should compete against men in boxing because God designed men and women differently. And you just leave it and let them go on their screed. But what will stay with them is your peace, and your peace will communicate with them. Will abide with them, is what I mean to say.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.